let's talk King Richard first. King Richard, starring, in the lead role, Will Smith. Richard Williams serves as coach to his daughters Venus and Serena, who will soon become, two of the most legendary tennis players in history. I think two of the most famous athletes of all time.
Mm-hmm.
This is a story that I don't know. Like, how aware were you guys of Richard Williams and his involvement and all?
Very, very minimal, because I'm not like a tennis aficionado by any stretch. Like, I obviously know Venus and Serena Williams. I didn't know how involved their father was in their life growing up, which made this movie a great movie to go home after and like Wikipedia search everything, because every single moment, they did a great job of this before, just to preview this, they did a great job of recreating moments that I guess happened with Richard Williams during their real life. And like, I went back and like read all that stuff. It was very, very fascinating. Yeah,
I knew a fair amount. I grew up playing tennis. I know a lot about their story. I knew of Richard Williams' involvement in their lives. I did not know necessarily the extent. But yeah, this movie definitely, it covers all bases in regards to how involved he was in their lives.
Yeah, it's when I think of like coaches of well-known athletes, I think of Earl Woods, Tiger's dad, and I think of Richard Williams. I don't know this story as well as I know like Tiger's life, but like I think it's just one of those people that it's synonymous with the success of his daughters and tennis. And so it's interesting. It's a fascinating story. And just the idea of Venus and Serena is one of those things because everyone's a phenom now, right? It's from fucking Arch Manning down to, there'll be 10 other basketball players the next 2 or 3 years who, they may go to college, they may skip and go overseas. It's like the Ball family. Like
Amani Bates has been a big one recently.
Right. They're not a dime a dozen. Like, they're incredible fucking athletes, but it's one of those things that is, the Ball family thing is crazy. Like, the fact that there's 2 good balls and then a third is in the NBA is wild. LaMelo was kind of clowned for a couple of years and he's best of the balls.
Sounds funny. It is hilarious the way you just phrased that.
Yeah. But the fact that you have two daughters who are not good, like, look, maybe LaMelo and maybe he's going to be like in a top 10 conversation one day. I don't know. Like, you don't know. I think it's chances of it happening are unlikely, not because of his skill set, because it's just a crazy thing to do.
He's a top 10 Hornet probably already.
Yeah, but exactly. But the fact that both of his daughters are 2 of the greatest of all time is just insane. And so it is a fascinating story. He set out to do something and he achieved it. Like, it's wild. It's truly wild to see how that unfolded. Another thing that I think is interesting with the movie is I think a lot of people who may not have followed tennis as closely, we've seen this from our coworkers tweeted about it. People forget that Venus was like was the first.
I didn't know that at all.
I remember
like at all.
Yeah, I remember growing up and Venus, like, Venus was the name, and then it's Serena. Now Serena's obviously, as great of an athlete, not just tennis, as anyone. Anyway, that's kind of the interesting things that come out of this. If you've never seen it before. I'll get a little. There's a little longer premise for those who maybe haven't seen it or just want a refresher. But it's about Richard Williams raising his 2 daughters, Venus and Serena, plus his 3 stepdaughters in Compton. Venus competes in the junior circuit, goes pro at the age of 14. Richard kind of hesitant about her going pro. Richard changes his mind. We get a coach involved in the movie, played by Jon Bernthal, in a pretty unorthodox Jon Bernthal role, I thought.
He was like meek. He never plays a meek guy. He's always like the really alpha male in whatever movie's in. He was like nice and like subdued. A nice little tempo change for him.
Yeah.
Then they move to Florida. They become professional players, sign some contracts. It's not that I don't like maybe the word creation, but it's a creation of 2 basically superstars. But it's a lot of it centered around Richard Williams. Also, very important note that the Williams sisters were incredibly involved with the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Which is cool in a sense that which a lot of times what I feel like we talk about these movies that are true stories and you have the people actually involved, and you feel like you don't get the whole picture, but they were pretty fucking honest in this movie. Like this movie, Richard Williams, by all accounts, painted like really great person, but very tough. And I think that comes through. I think if you've seen anything with Richard Williams and you compare it to Will Smith's performance, it's pretty fascinating. Will Smith does an incredible job, but like this is a pretty honest movie. And like we've seen it go both sides. Elton John made helped make a very honest movie about himself, like in the most fucked up, honest way possible. And
then Bohemian Rhapsody didn't, and it all worked out the way it worked out.
Yeah, but yeah, I thought King Richard is one of the better movies of the year. Very, very strong movie. 91 out of 100 for me. I think this is Will Smith's. I've hesitated saying it, but I'm going to say I think it's his best performance that he's ever had. I think there's a lot of Will Smith movies to go off of, but there's also a lot of garbage. I'm not going to throw Concussion up there. I know what was another one that he got a lot. Pursuit of Happiness he got praised for. Ali.
Ali he got nominated for, I believe.
Yeah. But I think Ali probably be his second. I will say this is I'll say this is his best performance, and I actually will be surprised if he doesn't win the Oscar. He's an Academy darling. He's presented Best Picture before. He's always in their fucking ad campaigns and promo materials. Like he is quintessential Hollywood. It just seems like this is Will Smith's time to win. Now I say that in a very different sense of like not Leo, who just got continuously fucked over and just couldn't win Best Actor. But like that's a very different, it's his time. It does feel like Will Smith's time to win. And I think it would be a very deserving win. This is a really cool performance in a true story. And I think, unfortunately, the Oscars sometimes they like true stories a little too much for giving out Best Actor awards. I think we saw that Eddie Redmayne, I think, is a great example, Theory of Everything. I think he did a good job. I don't think he won Best Actor, but he was a shoo-in because he played a real person. I think Will Smith, if he wins, incredibly deserving. He was pretty fucking outstanding in this movie. 91 out of 100. It's on HBO Max. See it in theaters you can, but this is kind of a perfect movie where I think it's one of the ones you can suggest to anybody and they'll enjoy it. I can't really see anyone disliking this movie. Like that'd be crazy to me. KenJac.
No, yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think it was fantastic. And again, as someone who's not super tuned into tennis, a lot of this is very fresh to me. And I think that, I don't know if that played a factor in my enjoyment level at all. I really don't think it made a huge difference, obviously, because both you guys, as far as I know, have loved it as well. But I think learning the origin stories about two of just like one of the most dominant athletes, two of the most dominant athletes of all time is really cool. I like the dramatic angle that they took on it. And Will Smith, I think, did a really good job. I think in what was complicated about this role is that there was like, you had to show kind of two sides of it in a sense, right? Like the domineering parent that a lot of people thought he was, but also like the caring parent, which he also was. And I think that it's his best performance. I would say it's still secondary to me only to Pursuit of Happiness, because I think he absolutely crushed that role. But I think he dominated in this movie as well. It's his movie. Obviously it's King Richard. I think he really makes the movie his own. And I think he carried everything around him with his like sort of like natural charisma. And I think he really fit into this in a way that I didn't know necessarily if he would do well in, because he's such like a likable guy, Will Smith, which is why like you want to root for him in almost any movie you see him in. Like you don't want to necessarily buy him as the bad guy or whatever. And I think he did a good job of layering his likability with like a little bit of an edge to it. So you're still thinking throughout the movie, like, is this guy an asshole? Is he being over domineering? Is he being a bad dad here? And I think he did a really good job there. And he needed this bad, because his last decade has been shit. It's fucking Concussion, Focus, Bright, Men in Black 3, Gemini Man, Suicide Squad, Winter's Tale, Collateral Beauty, After Earth.
Oh, Collateral Beauty was so bad.
Dude,
so much.
Nothing but garbage. And she needed this really, really bad. And I think he crushed it. I think the two young women who played Venus and Serena were also incredibly, did a really, really good job. I like how they kind of, they showed real tennis. And that's something you always get worried about with a sports movie, right? Is like when they show people actually playing sports, it never ever looks real. And when you're having kids play real sports, it's an even bigger, like, oh, fuck, like there's gonna have a big, like a suspension of disbelief here. But I think they did a good job, like making me believe like, oh, these are like legit athletes. I think they did really, really good there. I do think when you watch this movie, you have to take it with a little bit of a grain of salt because there's definitely some creative liberties to make both Richard and the Williams family come off as good, really good, which I assume was sort of a prerequisite, right, for the Williams sisters' involvement in the movie and like their promotion of it, blah, 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 their acceptance of it. So like there's definitely a little bit of grain of salt to take in with it. But I think as a general movie, the dramatization and all that was fantastic. And that movie filled a hole that I think we've had for a while as far as like a great sports movie. You know, like we haven't had like a great dramatic sports movie like we haven't had since like Moneyball. And Moneyball is not exactly like in the same lane as like a Remember the Titans or, you know, Varsity Blues. I think this is kind of like an in between both of those sort of worlds where it's like you get the dramatic Moneyball angle, but also like more uplifting, you know, that part of your brain where you just want something like nice and uplifting. You want them to win. You want that. And I think it gives you both of those worlds really, really well. I love this movie. I would really recommend watching it in a theater. I watched it in a theater, then I watched it at home while I was like Wikipediaing the stuff that was happening. And it was great. It was like a fun research project to do because I didn't know any of this shit before. And like that, like for example, there's that one interview where Richard Williams like gets in the reporter's face, right? And he's like, hey, like stop yelling at her. It's like a young black woman. She just told you the answer to the question. Stop pressing her. She's just a kid. And like I was like, oh, that's interesting. That already happened. I looked it up and watched the real interview. And like there's so many moments like that. And I think that they did just a really good job of combining the real world elements of it and just dramatizing it for the effect of cinema. So bravo to this movie.
Before you give yours, Chris, I want to rip through since Moneyball. It's really not many. There are some good ones, but there's not many. These are movies that are rated, I'm going to say 85 or higher sports movies since Moneyball, which Moneyball is 10 years ago.
Yeah, that's crazy, right?
85 or higher on movierankings.net. Warrior, which is awesome.
Yeah.
I
don't think of like fight movies in that same sense, which isn't fair. But
if you take fight movies out, then we're really going to have a smaller list because that takes out Creed. So let's take out fight movies. So Warrior, Win-Win, Creed 2. We'll take those out. After that, I don't think 42. 42 we have it as 76. Would you Rush? But that's a racing movie.
No,
right? After that, there you go. Foxcatcher. It's another it's like wrestling and boxing. That's it. Draft Day, some may consider a classic for certain reasons. After that, Mississippi Grind, if you consider gambling.
Gambling is a sport, yeah.
Again, is there anything? Battle of the Sexes, I think, was a little underwhelming. That was another tennis movie. There's nothing. The most recent one that was an 80 or above would be like a The Way Back. But even that was a basketball movie, but
it was okay. That wasn't.
So you're
really
right. There
special.
really isn't you really have to include fighting movies to really consider there to be a decent crop of sports movies since Moneyball. And if you're looking for the big four sports, you just ain't gonna get it.
Yeah.
That's
going to be filled too. Don't forget, because we have the Kurt Warner movie coming soon, which I'm sure is going to be smash hit that everyone loves.
Right.
Hey, he's in studio, so
before I forget, 87 by the way on this movie. I forgot to get the rating.
Yep, 91 from 87 for you, Chris. Is it your favorite of the year, or is that
right now? Right now, yes. I would be surprised if it ends up being my favorite of the year. I have it at an 84 out of 100. I agree with pretty much everything you guys said. This is, you brought it up, KenJac. There was that. I say it was a year, but it was about 6 months back in the late 2000s when Will Smith was in I Am Legend and Hancock. And you're like, God, this guy's he's just the biggest movie star in the world. Not to say that I think those movies are amazing, but he was the reason they did well. And I think he's in his 50s now. I feel like when he turned 40, he kept trying to repeat the success of Hancock in Hitch and the first Men in Blacks, the first two really. And it seemed like his career was not lost because he's built up such a good he's got tenure here in Hollywood at this point. These are the roles he should be taking for the rest of his career, where you not only are stretching yourself as an actor because he gets the accent down, he gets the mannerisms down, but the one thing that Will Smith is famous for is being the most charming actor alive. And he's able to use that natural charisma to his advantage in this movie. I brought up this film last week, but I remember, when The Blind Side came out, it was a big deal. And I still kind of defend it. I think it's a lot of fun. It's a nice little family movie, but I think that this is like the 2021 version of what that movie was to people back in 2009, where I think that this is way more accessible. One of the big problems with The Blind Side is like, it is like the stereotypical like Christian conservative movie ever. And there is like kind of a weird, like sinister vibe to it. I still defend it, but here I think this is more accessible. And what I think works about this one that maybe didn't work in something like The Blind Side is that Sandra Bullock's great in that movie, right? But there's really no other big personality that she really plays off of. It's so much her movie. I really think that Jon Bernthal, in a lot of ways, kind of saved this movie because it's so Will Smith dominated throughout the first half of the movie. And it's his film. He, along with the Williams sisters, helped kind of fund this thing. You know, I mean, there is a vanity element to this, knowing that he's going for the Oscar. But when Jon Bernthal showed up, I thought their chemistry was great. And I think Jon Bernthal to me is one of those actors who real soon is going to have like that Oscar caliber role. That's like, he's already on the map. He's done a lot of high profile stuff, but I think he's like got a very high ceiling as an actor. I've never seen him in anything that I didn't like him in. But the biggest compliment I can give this movie is that it's 2.5 hours almost. And it never bored me. I thought it moved at a good pace. I thought it was well directed. It had a good story. I think that the character of Richard Williams is such a fascinating character, even not even taking into account the fact this is based on a true story, just taking it as a work of fiction. He's a very fascinating personality. There's a lot of like good humor, I felt like, spliced in every so often. It's a really well made. It is safe. That's the one kind of knock I would have.
Right. That's my biggest. That would be my biggest. I think creatively it's safe. You're right.
It does have that kind of Hollywood sheen because, and I think part of it is one, the Williams sisters, you know, wanted themselves to be portrayed in a good light. And two, there are certain movies that have those Oscar caliber performances that maybe are not as accessible as something else. Like the movies that Will Smith has gotten Oscar nominations for. You had the biopic about Muhammad Ali. You had another kind of safe movie, In Pursuit of Happiness, which I love. And now you have this. It is very by the book Hollywood 101, but sometimes that's not a bad thing. And I do think that you have something here that it works. It really works, regardless of whether you know the story or not. I think it's really well acted. It is very sincere, and regardless of how safe it is, I felt like the execution was excellent. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I think that's a key thing to bring up with this. I think it is definitely safe.
You need the grain of salt. That's what I was saying before. It's like very much you absorb it for not necessarily being like it's not a fucking documentary, right? And it's not told through an unbiased lens for sure.
Right. And I think that is okay, like Chris said too, because I think it's fine that it's safe. Because I think it's so well acted that it works in that sense. And I think that's a problem with a lot of biopics and true stories is that they are very formulaic. This is a classic formulaic sports movie, but when there's even a little bit of a hint of like poor acting or poor screenplay, it can be a disaster quickly.
Oh yeah.
It can be really fucking bad. And that's when we start to get, because and like we've talked about it, there really is nothing worse than a bad sports movie, because a bad sports movie is brutal. Bad horror can be pretty tough too, or a bad comedy, but a bad horror or a bad comedy can still have some sort of charm. A bad sports movie is like cringe, and not in a good way. And I know we talk about that with like, I think Draft Day fits that bill perfectly. Now we like talking about Draft Day because it's kind of a meme at this point. Mm-hmm. But a bad sports movie is about as bad in terms of a genre can possibly get.
Yeah.
And so I think there's almost an odd, like, I kind of tip my cap that it still played it decently safe. I mean, you have a character who, they didn't glorify him and all. Like, you definitely see like the struggles of, the father-daughter's relationship, and they were fairly honest about it. I mean, it also speaks to the fact that Will Smith does mostly safe movies, like him being a villain in Suicide Squad was like crazy. It's like just very un-Will Smith. Like, but
even then, that wasn't even really a villain. It was,
Right,
like, it was
they
as likable a villain as you could.
Yeah. He's like a daughter, like a redemptive story. But it is maybe my one knock that it's not safe in a sense that like it's too nice. It's just very by the book for what a sports biopic can be. But again, that's kind of where I credit it is that it hit all its beats about as well as you could expect, about as well as you could hope.
To add to that too, I do have to say that I agree. Obviously, I agree with you. It is a bit safe, but this is one of those sports movies where the cliches feel earned, right? Because this shit actually happened. It's like I remember. It's like when you watch Miracle, you cannot complain about how the good guys win in the end. Well, that actually went down. They actually ended up winning the whole thing and beating the Russians. It was a huge deal. Like the story of the Williams sisters is a one in a bazillion story. The idea, like you brought it up earlier, Jeff, that like if you spend your entire life trying to get your children to be professional athletes, you will be lucky as hell if you have one who's just okay. The fact that they had two that at different points in their careers were the greatest in the world, those cliches do feel earned. Not to say that there aren't some cornball moments, and not to say that the movie does at points get a little bit repetitive. I felt like, especially in the first half, it feels earned. It as safe as it is, it doesn't feel like it overstays its welcome. It's a really good, solid Hollywood sports film.
I think beyond the risk of doing a sports movie, right? Like, because sports movies do more often than not, especially recently, be bad too, like Jeff was saying. But I do think beyond that, having kid actors play such a big role, kid actors can derail a movie really fast if they're not good. I thought both of the two girls that play the Serena Williams and Venus Williams were excellent. And I think they didn't overtask them with trying to like do anything too outside of the box, anything crazy. Like they made them they had them perform at the exact ratio they needed to be. And like, we can kind of dog this movie for being a little safe and not challenging the viewer too much, for sure. I don't think this was a movie that was meant to like break down barriers or anything like that. It's meant to be exactly what it was, which is in that sense, it's a total success. Do I wish they did some things maybe a little bit more something more to challenge me as a viewer, something more to like I don't know, just be a little more outside of the box? Sure, but at the risk of derailing what the movie was, no. So like that's where I'm at, where I'm like, I'm totally fine with this movie being where it's at, because anything more, they could have really lost like that. I feel like because what they did was so impactful, not only just to the sport of tennis, but like obviously if they were role models for African Americans all over the country and all over the globe and stuff like that. If they tried to do anything more in that sense, they could have really derailed this as far as like losing the air of subtlety to it and all that. And because I think this movie hit that those marks, especially like loud when they needed to be and subtle when they needed to be. So like that I think was really well done by them as well.
Good message, great acting, good story. Honest, like the thing, like you said, Chris, it's earned. It's you believe it, like you immerse yourself with it, and you connect to that. I think that's the other thing when it's a sports movie. I don't think you have to be a tennis fan. You don't have to be a sports fan, but you can be. You can be a diehard, like those sports movies like that, where it can kind of grab anybody. Because that's the other thing too. There are sports movies where you're like, okay. You know, like I can't think of a good example off the top. Maybe Draft Day might be a good example. You know, like you watch a sports movie, you're a big fan of that sport or that team or something, and you're like, what the fuck was that? And then you hear someone who may not be, and they're like, oh, I thought that was great. And you're like, what are you talking about? Like, you think that was good? Like, sports movies do that as much as anything. Yeah. Because it's either like a dumbing down of the story or changing things up to fit certain, like, where again this achieved, or again I would be very surprised. I don't think this is on. I rate everything on a level of the movie Chef, of if everybody will like it. I don't think any human being could dislike, even if they don't love Chef. I don't think anyone could dislike the movie Chef. I saw rating it on that scale. Like I think this is as high up there for a sports movie as it gets. Like this may not be like Miracle is probably the highest, because like I think you have a hard time showing anybody Miracle, and they're like, "Oh, I didn't love that." Like, it's just like it's very prideful, and it has like you get like
a member of the Russian hockey team, not a big fan. That's pretty much it.
Yeah.
Like, okay, so I'll say Americans you show it to. I have a hard like this is up there. Like, this is I was very impressed with this movie because I think this is something where you tell me a year ago, I see nothing, I hear nothing, I just hear Will Smith is playing the Williams sisters' father. I'd be like, oh man, that's gonna be just like middle of the road Oscar bait. It is Oscar bait. Call it what it is. But as I always say, I don't give a shit if it's Oscar bait if it's good. Who fucking cares? If it's Oscar bait, fine. Like, that's always like a weird knock for me. If it's bad Oscar bait, I will destroy it. But if it's Oscar bait and it's good, then guess what? It's just a good Oscar-worthy movie. Like, that's okay. Like, that's fine. And I guess we get here. And I do think he is going to win Best Actor too.
It would.
I'm going to pull up.
It feels like it kind of falls in line, doesn't it? And again, it has not been a great year for movies yet, and it has not been a great year for lead performances either. And while I think Will Smith is better in this than the actor I'm about to bring up, I remember when Brad Pitt won for Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I would not put that in like his top 5 like he plays a really awesome version of Brad Pitt, but like he won the Oscar for it because he'd been around forever, and they said, hey, it's his time. I think we could very much get that kind of vibe from King Richard with Will Smith as an actor who's been going for it for a while, finally found that right role. We'll see. But yeah, I kind of agree that he's probably the front runner right now.
Ultimate redemption for him being on the most disliked YouTube video of all time to now being a potential Oscar winner. That's another funny thing we forget to add into his movie compendium is the fact that he made that YouTube Rewind movie that was like one of the most disliked things ever.
Yeah,
on
YouTube. He Will Smith effectively killed YouTube Rewind, which used to be like one of the most anticipated YouTube videos of the year. Yeah, he's the favorite right now in Gold Derby. Benedict Cumberbatch, the Power of the Dog has received.
Oh, I can't wait to see that, dude.
I gotta watch
such great things.
I listened to somebody. Who was it? Might have been a tweet. Somebody said they're like, is Power of the Dog really that good? Because it's considered the front runner like in everything. Denzel Washington for Tragedy of Macbeth. That's A24. I can see that. Andrew Garfield, Tick Tick Boom. I think we all like Tick Tick Boom, but I don't think Andrew Garfield. I don't know. Like I like that.
He won't win, but I think he should definitely be nominated. I thought.
Yeah, I don't think he'll win, but I think he's good.
That's not an Oscar-winning performance at all.
Peter Dinklage for Cyrano or whatever. Man, that movie could not be any less my thing. I saw that. I had not seen that trailer, and I saw it the other day when I saw House of Gucci. I've never wanted to watch a movie less. I will watch it. I'll watch it. We may have an interview for that movie, but that's just not my type of movie. So I don't know. Haven't seen it though. Leonardo DiCaprio, Don't Look Up is up there apparently. Again, haven't seen it. Same with Bradley Cooper, Nightmare Alley. Javier Bardem, KenJac, you saw Beating the Ricardos. You said that was incredible.
Dude, it's awesome, man. Fucking not necessarily for Javier Bardem. I think he was just okay, but Nicole Kidman I could see her winning, dude. She's incredible in that movie.
I hope she gets a lot of praise because I'm fucking tired of Deborah Messing trending for them not casting her in that role. They're like, she looks so much like, who gives a fuck?
How do you complain about getting fucking Nicole Kidman cast in like one of the most famous fucking actresses in history? Are you kidding me?
How did they pass over Deborah Messing? Which, like, no disrespect to Deborah Messing, but like,
she's not Nicole Kidman.
Aaron Sorkin didn't want Deborah Messing in the lead role for his. It's like, what? And then a bunch of other things like Joaquin Phoenix for Come On, which I haven't seen, which I should, because that is in the area. Chalamet is not going to get one for Dune. I think if anything, even though I loved Chalamet and Dune, if anything, the person who's not getting respect at all, I thought Tim Blake Nelson, Old Henry, very good performance. Nicolas Cage and Pig should be getting way more. Yeah. There's no chance he does.
He crushed that.
No,
he's so
good. And the movie was not big enough. He's also suffering. He's reached a point in his career where he's suffering from like the Eddie Murphy Norbit syndrome, where I just think he's made so much shit that I don't think people are putting him on their radar.
And he's won and the other thing too is he's won an Oscar.
That's also true. Yeah.
True. Yeah.
So I don't know, though. I do think there is one more Cage, and I think Pig was great. I think there's one. I think Cage has one in his holster though that he will be up there.
Dude, we always say it. He gives 110%. Doesn't matter if it's the biggest piece of shit he gets paid in Jiffy Lube coupons for, or if it's like a massive budget movie.
I feel like
kills
he's due for that Mickey Rourke and the Wrestler performance.
That would be great.
Pig just wasn't. Pig's not that big enough.
It's not mainstream enough.
Right.
It's not like meta. I mean, fucking what's his Simon Rex is about to potentially be nominated.
Yeah, true.
Right. Which actually we didn't mention that. Which he could be that he could sneak up there. I'm excited to see Red Rocket. By the way, in terms of actress, Nicole Kidman is second, but to Kristen Stewart, who is not going to lose that. I don't see any world in which Kristen Stewart does not win Best Actress.
You guys got wait to see them fucking be in their Carters, man. Kidman
I'm very
crushed
excited.
it.
I'm bummed I missed a screening. Very excited for that. So that's our King Richard review. Very high praise King Richard. I'd say average there, right around the 90s. It's absolutely worth checking out in theaters, and if not, watch it on HBO Max, especially holiday season coming up. King Richard.